Hi, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. Such a pleasure to be able to speak to you today. Maybe you could just kick off with a brief introduction, introduce yourself, but also your film, Memories of a Burning Body. For people who don't know anything about it, what can they expect going in?
Yeah, well, basically, this is a film that talks about womanhood. It starts from a conversation with basically my grandmother. And when I wasn't able to go deep in the conversation with her because she was already 92 years old and having memory issues, I started talking with other women. And from the conversation with these other women, we ended up doing the film. So basically, it's a film full of memories about what it was for them to grow up as women, how they understood or they like started to realize what they wanted, learning about desire, learning about, like the restrictions of being a woman, but also the liberties of being one, and essentially how they live and understand sexuality now that they are over 65, they're 70s, 80, 90 years old.
And it's such an original concept for a film, just in its form, in its concept. How did the idea come to you, and how did you, I guess, even find and narrow down these three particular subjects whose memories you've intertwined in this incredibly poetic way, kind of into one woman's memories? But it's such a unique idea. Where did you get it?
I started, as I told you, like talking to my grandmother just to try to understand how it could have been for them when they were growing up. And well, one of my grandmothers from my mother's side, she had 11 children and the other one 7, and I was never able to ask them if they enjoy their sexuality, if they had an orgasm, like if they all their like pregnancies where they wanted. And when I started talking to these other women, I started just asking around people if they want to talk to me. Basically, at the beginning I really was searching for people that were completely different, to understand like they came from different backgrounds, different economical backgrounds, social backgrounds. There was an intention of searching for women that came from different places. I started talking to different women. Some of them didn't want to continue the conversation, as they, it was such a taboo for them to talk about these subjects or about these themes. And actually in the film, I understand that we talk about 3 main women, but I ended up talking with at least 8 women, almost 15, but in the film there are 8 women. There are 8 different voices. Yeah, basically it was a conversation, a dialogue that we had for many years. And I ended up like hearing all these testimonies that they gave me, all these stories that they told me, and ended up writing the script that you can now see in Memories of a Burning Body. So it was a slow process, let's say. It was a long investigation, a long writing process until we came up with this. And the whole idea of intertwining their stories was also like out of respect to these women, because they didn't want to be recognized. I didn't want any particular details of their stories so that people couldn't recognize them, and by intertwining their stories is the story of no one. It's a story of many people, but it's not the story of a particular person. So in that sense also, that's why the film, it's like it is.
And one of the things I really love about it is it sort of balances so many different aspects of their experiences. So it once is very funny at times, while also talking about really challenging, sometimes quite violent subjects. So you're both, able to really empathize with them, following their sort of joyful moments as well as these really difficult moments, and really sort of reflect on, what circumstances they had to grow up in, this very patriarchal, repressive society. So was that also something very important to you in the tone of balancing those different things?
At every time, it was a long process. As I told you, it was at least 2 years or 3 years almost of investigation. And I was always wondering myself what kind of movie this was going to be, because of course there was so much more violence, and at some points I was like, is this a denounce film? It is, like, is it about denouncing sexual violence, or what is it about? Like, I really, but then I had this mixture of things, as you said, like I had this beautiful poetic analysis of what life is, and then also this humoristic and anecdotes. So there was so much going on, and I was always like trying to find the balance of it all, because it ended up, I mean, for me at first it was such a like a quest of trying to understand how was life for my grandmothers when they were growing up, and how women after 65 enjoy their sexualities, because it's something that no one talks about, like it comes to a point that after menopause, like everybody else, everybody thinks like women don't exist anymore. So I was trying to understand what it was for them to enjoy their bodies, to, explore sexuality with themselves, with others, and so on. And with these two quests, I started the movie, or I started the investigation. I started talking to these women. But during the process, there was always this questioning, like this questioning of, what's the film about? What's the film about? And it ended up somehow like, like a journey of a woman, like the life experience of a woman, or at least these women that lived in a different era, but that resonates so much with what I also lived when I was growing up. So yeah, it was a hard work to balance the whole film and to make it, to reflect all these emotions that they conveyed to me when they were telling me their stories.
And of course, then when you're doing sort of the recreations, both when she's young and when she's older, you're really getting into the realms of shooting a fiction film in lots of ways. So what was that like? How did you cast the people who were going to be in the film? And what were some of the highlights and challenges of filming all those aspects?
Yes. Well, basically, I ended up deciding to work with actresses since the beginning. When I started talking to these women, they already told me, like, I don't want to appear in camera, I don't want to be recognized. So I understood that I had to respect their anonymity, and I had to come up with something because film, of course, I had these beautiful testimonies in audio, but film is, of course, also image. And I decided to work with actresses, especially because I had like this feeling that people should, like connect with the skin of these stories somehow. Like it was very important to see, but also like feel what they were feeling when they were telling these stories. And yeah, I don't know, it was a long process to came up with the idea of what the film is about. So it was, like I don't know, it came through the writing, through the rewriting. I came up with this whole concept of doing films. And I also was very inspired of with things that they actually told me, like this idea that the time is not linear, but it's like a bubble. So like working with actresses in the same, like having the past living in the present, like ghost of like the memories of the past living with the present. So everybody in the same shot. And yeah, it came out as an inspiration of something that they actually told me. So many of the things that you see on screen is basically that, like ideas that I got from what they were telling me, or from their own stories, or their own ways of perceiving life. At some points, it was so, like philosophical, like, I don't know, this idea of guilt being like a tree, or so many things that were so beautifully said from them, that conveyed, that ended up being portrayed in the image as well. And it was very lovely to work with the actresses as well. Like Sol Caraballo, the main actress, did an amazing job. Also Paulina Bernini, who plays the younger woman, and that child by Juliana Fijoy, like they all looked alike in a way, but they had so many common things in their personalities that it was very interesting and entertaining to watch as well.
And did you have a favorite scene, or when you watch it back now, a favorite scene, or on the flip side, one that was particularly difficult to shoot? I love the bit with the nuns where they're trying to teach them something and they're not actually teaching them anything at all. It's this idea of trying to educate people, but not having any of the confidence or language themselves to talk about anything. So it's kind of useless.
Yes, sure. Well, that comes, of course, from their memories as well. It's funny because you're trying to recreate in a way what they are telling you, what they, and it will never be the same as what they've lived, because of course I wasn't there, so I'm just like reimagining their memories in a way. And of course, it's no one's memories, as I told you before. Like I'm not telling one memory, I'm telling a mix of memories that become one memory that is portrayed in the film. So favorite scenes, I would say like the scene about guilt. Like for me, that was very moving because I think women all over the world have felt guilt at some point in their lives. And that idea that guilt can, shape the way you see the world or how you experience it, it's strong, it's like it's deep and wrong as well. But yeah, I don't know, I love that. But also I love the funny parts. Like I really loved and enjoyed coming with this concept of everything being in the same house, like everything was shot in the same house, even the fair, for instance. And working with the team to make that possible was amazing. Like the art department did a great job just to make these convertible house. Like at some point, one bedroom becomes a hospital, like the garage becomes the fair. I don't know, it was very imaginative and it was very lovely to also work with it. It was even more, like recognizable because 1 month before entering that house, the house was completely empty. So, the work that we had to put on, like the art department, to make that house feel like a grandma's house that had lived so many lives inside. I don't know. It was, I really enjoyed that as well while doing the film.
And what I was thinking when I was watching it is, this idea of it being quite taboo for, even to ask old women about their sexuality and their sex lives. But then I thought, well, even for younger women as well, and how that is portrayed on screen. I mean, obviously we are making progress, but you do still feel like a lot of what we see on screen is still through a male gaze. How often do you see, periods being dealt with, sex in a marriage, without orgasms, all these kind of nuances. Maybe it is still quite revolutionary to talk about this on screen. And did you feel that even when you were making the film, and then when you've watched it back now or shown it to audiences now?
I no, I really didn't. It was a process of understanding. Like, let's say the film, in a way, really confused me because I'm more used to, like thinking about like controlling every aspect of the film. And in this case, of course, I was based on real stories. I mean, like the film, the heart of the film are their testimonies. And in a way, it all depended on what they told me, or on what they, like intimately trusted me. So in that sense, yeah, I was always wondering if I was talking about something new. Like if a woman sees this film, she can feel like there's so much of her life, but like it doesn't have to be new or in, like, I don't know what's the word in English, like I'm trying to find to describe this. Are we talking about something that we haven't talked already? I was wondering of that the whole time doing the film. And it seems like, yes, we haven't talked about this as much because there's so many things that are still taboo, that, like having an older woman talk about sexuality, when we tend to believe, as I told you at the beginning, like women at a certain age don't exist anymore and they are not, like entitled to own their body and have their own sexuality. So there's so many things that we actually don't talk about. So in that sense, yes, I had my doubts and my thoughts about it, and I was always wondering. But I believe the core of the film is how authentic they are when talking about these subjects. Because even if it's something that you already know, even if it's something that you experience yourself, or even if it's something that it's so regular, so common, so mundane, still hearing that from them, coming from the context that they come from. I don't know, there's something that, at least to me, it really engaged me to tell this story. Like truly, like made me, it had like this sense of urgency to tell it, because I've never heard people this age talk about this. So for me, it was even more important. And at the beginning, yes, they told me that they were to be, they wanted to be treated anonymously, even if they don't appear on screen. I always say, like, their voices scream, because they had so much, like, they never talked about these things with their family, with their, like, children, mother, daughters, whatever. They never talk about this, but they trusted me with this. But they had such an urge to actually talk about this, like, even if they've never talked about it, they had this sense of urgency to discuss about this, because it's something that it has to be said. In a way, it has to be said, like, we are entitled of our own sexuality. We don't belong to anyone. We're never old, we're never dead, like, this sense of the will to live that they still have at 80, at 70. It's so lovely, it's so refreshing. And I think that's the core of the film, like, understanding that we are alive until the last very moment, and we're entitled to live our lives freely, with courage, and, like, deciding how our life's gonna be.
And in terms of those takeaways, what has been the response from audiences? I mean, I think for me, it just really struck me that maybe we are just a bit too dismissive of this older generation, and there is just so much we can learn from engaging with them, and lots of points are still incredibly poignant today. What does it mean to be a woman? Do we still have that obsession, or it's to be pretty, when she says, oh no, it's to be strong and sweet and passionate and all these other things. That's a very contemporary question too. So what do you hope people go away after thinking about and talking about after watching your film?
Yeah, well, what I've experienced mostly is, like, people, which was also my objective somehow, like, that people go out of the cinema thinking about their mothers, their grandmothers, like, how it was for them, that they ask themselves this question, and hopefully, if they still have them around, that they get the chance to talk about this, because with them, because I think we can learn so much from this intergenerational dialogue, like, yes, as you told, we are mostly dismissive. Like, when you visit your grandmother, what do you really talk about? Like, what are the kind of conversations that you're having with your own family? How deep are you going in those conversations? Or are you just, like, hey, how are you? That's it. Like, how deep are you willing to go to understand where we come from, where we came from, and how we came to what we are today? Because I believe, in a way, like, this film makes a recount of memories of what they went through, so that we women now have the rights that we have now. Like, everything that they experienced summed up in a way to make us women now where we are, like, stand where we are. So in the sense, it's like, I tend to say, like, it's a journey into the past, only to understand our present, and to not forget what we went through, so that we don't repeat again. Yeah, that was at least my journey when I was doing the film, and that's probably what I hope that people take from the film.
And of course, you had so much success with your first film, and again with the second one, the award, the Panorama Award in the Berlinale. Obviously now it's landing here in UK cinemas. What does that kind of recognition mean to you? And I guess realizing that, your film is resonating with people all around the world.
I mean, like, that's absolutely crazy, because I really thought it was a very Costa Rican film, because it's people from Costa Rica telling their stories, and you wouldn't imagine that it would resonate as much with other people. But that has, like, a very bright and lovely side, because it's absolutely, like, I feel super thankful that people connect so much with the film from different contexts, but also it has a downside, I believe. Like, there's a sad part, because if it resonates, because they probably had the same experiences, and they have like that registry of emotions, feelings, past experience in their own families. So it's a, it's super, like, I feel super thankful, but also it makes me think, it makes me reflect on why it resonates with other audiences as well. That means that the experience of women all over the world has like a common, background somehow. Yeah, it's painful. That experience is many times very painful.
And what's going to be next for you? Do you already know what your next project's going to be?
If it would be for me, like, I think about a film every day and a half, like, I'm thinking about a new film every day, and I already have a few projects in the loop. But it's really hard to make films in Costa Rica, I must admit. Like, it's a process of, going through a long, it's a long process. It's hard to find funding, and yeah, it takes a toll in yourself. Like, I don't do this for a living. I don't do films for a living. I have to do other works or other jobs in order to, have my food on the plate. So it really takes a toll somehow. So I'm tired. That's what I'm trying to say, basically. I need like like a pause, like a time to think, exactly, to breathe, and also enjoy the reaction of people with the film, enjoy what's happening with the film, because yeah, that's the biggest reward. It's not a commercial film. It's not a film that will make me millionaire. Like, it's a film that connects with people because it conveys a story that it's relevant, and that it's like, it resonates with modern women and the experience of womanhood. And that's the beauty of it. I believe that's my recognition, my biggest recognition, precisely that.
Thank you so much for sharing all that with me. And huge congratulations on the film. There's so much that struck a chord with me. I guess also, like in the UK, we've got Irish Catholic backgrounds. My mum, the school I went to had nuns in it. So I think a lot of these things, there's some commonality for a lot of women's upbringings that I think they can find in this film. So thank you so much. And thanks for sharing all that with me. Cheers.